Good morning. Welcome to CSLDallas Science Mind class. I'm Dr. Petra, and we are continuing on our exploration of this aspect of the divine, infinite reality, that thing which we call God, spirit, that aspect of the infinite reality that we call spirit. We're going to remember that it's impossible to separate spirit, soul, and body. It's impossible to separate the one into parts, but we can separate them into aspects and things about the way in which the one is and operates and becomes, so that we can grab a hold of it. So we're in spirit. Spirit the changeless. Spirit the changeless. It'll be interesting as we go through this paragraph why we think it was titled Spirit the Changeless. Creation does not make something out of nothing. Creation is the passing of spirit into form and is eternally going on. Spirit cannot change, for being all, there is nothing for it to change into. This is self-evident. Really? Is that self-evident?
No.
Creation does not make something out of nothing. Creation is the passing of spirit into form and is eternally going on. So we have creation moving into form, implying change. But spirit cannot change, for being all, there is nothing for it to change into. So what does that imply about creation, about the form? It's part of the one. Spirit doesn't create and pass out of itself into something else. No. You gotta just hold it lightly. Just hold it lightly, and okay, I'm not even sure what that means, but we're just gonna hold it lightly. So one of the things we'll notice is that Ernest Holmes is sloppy about his language. It's very annoying. And he has more than 100 names or words that he uses in place of the word God. Because God is somewhat of a glyph. It's a somewhat meaningless word that we use to describe or to get a hold of that the biggest spiritual thing we can imagine. And it has a lot of associations. So Ernest Holmes is constantly retranslating that word. So watch as we're reading. He uses the word God, but he immediately defines it, or I don't want to say that's not so much defining it as pointing to something about this infinite reality that is what we're actually talking about. And the discipline of using words other than God is what pops us into a new understanding of the nature of reality. And to not just continually use this sort of word that means everything, right? Which is synonymous to the word one. So we could just say one, and it's one, and I'm praying one, and then it's the one, and then one happens. Right? Which is essentially why we parse it out and why it becomes important to begin to grapple with what words are we going to use to describe or to embody our understanding of the totality of this infinite thing. So in this case, spirit into form is actually what is the one, right? The one undifferentiated. Spirit cannot change is the causal nature of that one. The causal nature can't change. It's always causal. It's always for life. It's always love. There's no opposites in this. It's the absolute reality, and therefore is never changing. I mean, love is always love. It only changes in expression, right? Whether you love your child, whether it's a love-hate relationship, whether you love chocolate, whether it's unconditional love, all of that is the expression of love. But love, joy, peace, in their absolute state, never change. There's nothing, it's changeless. It's the expression of it. So spirit expressing in form, we're now talking about that impulse that is moving the one into expression. Form is expression. It is necessary for us to understand that the only active principle is spirit, self-conscious, self-knowing life, and that all else is subject to its will. Well, there's an interesting statement. So what do we think the will of this self-conscious, self-knowing life might be? Something worth pondering. The spirit is conscious of its own thought. And again, remember that earlier as we were working through all of this, remember that we understood that in the science of mind, the definition of thought is a movement in consciousness. Not, oh, I'm having a cerebral thought, a left brain thought out of my left brain, right? That's a human thought. But it's a movement in consciousness. And over and over and over again throughout the writings of the science of mind, Ernest Holmes equates that with movement in consciousness and impulse. Not so much intention, right? Because again, intention is specificity, but an impulse. So the spirit is conscious of its own thought. Now here we come back to the word that we quibbled over last week, its own desire, its own manifest action. And it is conscious that its desire is satisfied. Consequently, it is conscious of that which it manifests, but it is not conscious of any effort or process in manifestation. Okay, anytime Ernest Holmes has anything in italics or in all caps, just like in text, all caps, he's shouting, pay attention, right? And in italics, it's something very, very profound. It's a nuance, it's a subtle thing, it's something that he doesn't want us to miss in this conversation. So spirit and soul and body exist because spirit needs that. All right, so we're going to stop there. Let's just go back up. The only active principle is spirit. Self-conscious, self-knowing life. So the definition of spirit here is self-conscious, self-knowing life. And that all else is subject to its will. Yeah. So if it is self-conscious and self-knowing life, and it is the only active principle, what might we extrapolate from that its will is?
Survive, thrive, and reproduce.
In form,
Yeah.
but spirit is not yet formed.
Not yet. Okay.
Right? So once it's in form, life has been, what shall we say, impregnated with exactly those things, right? Survive, thrive, and reproduce. And what is the result of surviving, thriving, and reproducing?
Life continues.
Life continues. And it keeps creating more. And if we understand that the manifest universe is an expression of the one, infinite life, and spirit is that movement in consciousness that's the active principle into form, and we just extrapolated that creation, form, is always about more life, what do we understand the will of God to be? More life. More life. This continual expression of itself. This continual expression. So the impulse, the desire, is expression. Why? Now we come to the question, why do we think that is its desire? It is necessary that soul and body should exist because spirit, without manifestation, would construct only a dream world, never coming to self-realization. In order to express, there must be a medium through which spirit manifests, and there must be manifestation. hence soul and body. Soul being the medium through which it manifests, body being through the manifestation. This is the teachings of the great thinkers of all time. We live in a threefold nature: spirit, soul, and body. Intelligence, substance, and form. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Actually, Father, Holy Ghost, Son. Right? If we're extrapolating kind of the similarities between the three. And so, we might even, let's see if we can parse this even, if we're going to use science as a bit of another lens through, we might say quantum field, the particular quark that comes into that's the particle of the wave, right? Quantum field, then you have the particle, which would be similar to substance, and then all of that somehow comes together beyond quantum mechanics into Newtonian physics, into the experience of the macrocosmic world that we're experiencing here. So this idea that the one is it's too big for any one idea about it to encompass the whole thing. So we have to parse it out. But let's go back. It is necessary because spirit without manifestation would construct only a dream world. 1. 2, never coming to self-realization. Right? Massive thoughts here. So we have this all-encompassing one that cannot change. Absolute love, absolute beauty, absolute whatever the qualities are we give it. But there's no manifestation. What is there? There's nothing.
Right.
Because nothing has yet come into being. Nothing has yet manifested. So there's no thing. You guys can participate with these questions and hop onto the chat and answer it the way that you want to answer it. And Ryan will tell me, hey, we got something else here, because I don't want you to be left out. Bring your thoughts to the chat as well. This idea of only a dream world, right? And so part of what Ernest Holmes is doing here in The Science Mind is he is directly refuting the idea that the physical world, creation, is an illusion. Directly refuting that it's an illusion. That it is actually the manifestation of spirit into form, and therefore it is actually real. And it's not just a figment of our imagination. But if you have only the absolute with no form, you have no thing. Therefore, what you have is pure potential. But nothing yet. And so creation, manifestation is the requirement. It's the other side of the impulse for life. And so one of the things we have to kind of see, we think so linearly, and of course all of our creation stories are linear. In the beginning, something was created, and then it did, and then there was an outcome. And what we have to do is recognize that these two things are two sides of the same wholeness. So when we say we're whole or we're one, we're not just talking about the spiritual aspect, not just talking about the absolute, unformed, perfect, changeless reality. We're also talking about creation, all of form, two sides of the same coin, co-arising all the time. So when we say it's the alpha and the omega, right, we understand that there is actually no beginning and no end. This is eternally going on. The moment there is an impulse for life, there is in that moment creation, the expression of it. Or spirit, that infinite one, is only in pure potentiality, right? So the way that I really tried to bend my mind around this for years is I just tried to imagine spirit just ising. Just ising. Just being love. No thing. Just... Okay, eternity of that. I don't know. Then we would have no creation, right? Without creation, there is no self-expression of that self-existent, what did we say? Self-existing, self-knowing life. However, this is the really, I think this is the most fascinating thing, and one of the places where sometimes I think Ernest Holmes gets really sloppy, and there are times that I seriously disagree with him, and that is, would construct only a dream word, never coming to self-realization. Never coming to self-realization. So this is engaging in the 5,000-year-old conversation. Starts with, back in Hinduism, is this life real or is it an illusion? Goes through the whole Platonic conversation and the Neoplatonists. There is an idea of love, of beauty, of peace, and this world is only a reflection of it. Another nod to it's not real. It's a reflection of this causal reality. And all of that comes out of the Hermetic teaching, as above, so below. But in the Hermetic teaching, as above, so below, both as above and so below, there's no sense of hierarchy, or one is more spiritual or one is more real, or that what we get, the only thing we get from as above, so below is a directionality, cause to effect. And so that's the first part. And the second part is, if we think of a wholeness, if you think of one, in philosophy, all you can ever do is a thought experiment, right? We're all clear about that. You're just trying to do is a thought experiment. Bend your mind around it, try to go, Okay, so here's the thought experiment. So you're a thumb. Imagine that you're a thumb. You're a thumb. And all you know is that you're a thumb. And your entire existence is a thumb. Do you know that the other fingers exist? Do you even know that you belong to a hand? Do you actually know that you're a part of something that walks around in the world? Not if the only reality you have is your thumb. So this, we imagine, is the isness of spirit. The one outside of which there is nothing. So there's nothing to say, I'm spirit, because there's nothing that's not spirit. The only way the thumb knows that it's actually a thumb is actually in relationship to the fingers. Because there's something that's not a thumb and that it works in concert with, right? And I, as a person who can look at my thumb, I can send my consciousness into the thumb, but I only know it's there because I can see it. It's not the rest of me. Oh, there's a thumb. But is my thumb not completely part of my body? Completely. Unless I cut it off. It's completely part of my body, right? It's completely there, but it's only by being able to separate myself from it and look at it that I can say, oh, I have a thumb. Oh, I have a thought. Oh, I have a childhood pattern that's running amok, right? It's only because I can look at those things. So this is the philosophical thought experiment that also has been going on. It's the question of, what is consciousness? Where does consciousness come from? Is it the ghost in the machine? Is it just the outpicturing of the random, what do they call it? The ghost in the machine, as the synapses are firing, somehow consciousness, whatever. Or is it that consciousness has in fact created an organ which can see itself? Oh, wow, there's a principle. Oh, there's a law. Oh, that's how creation works. Oh, I can see an ecosystem. There's oneness. There's everything working together. If I step back again, wow, I can see the whole world, the globe, everything. That's all oneness. Oh, if I step back again, I can go physical universe. Wow, that's a oneness. Step back again. Oh, maybe all there is one. Do you see? And so we are constantly seeking to overcome our sense of separation and experience our oneness, except that our sense of separation is necessary to the self-realization of the whole. Right? Where you are becoming conscious is where the one is realizing itself at a whole nother level than the ising of the potentiality of life and the impulse of life. So we could just stop there and recognize that's how important creation is. That's how necessary you are. To the self-realization, never coming to self-realization without the manifestation of creation. And everything involved, from quarks on up to black holes. Right? All of that is an outpicturing of this impulse of life for life. Always for life. Even in destruction, there's life. Right? The beautiful forest floor, that fertile forest floor is created because all the leaves have fallen, the trees have fallen, the bugs have fallen, the deer have fallen, everything, and then life, more life, more life, more life, right? So the cycles in creation might be the changing, but the changeless is the impulse. And the way life is forever moving into creation, seeking to express, seeking more life. In order to express, there must be a medium through which spirit manifests, and there must be manifestations, hence soul and body, hence the next 2 chapters. We're going to talk about how the process of manifestation happens, and we're going to talk some more about the manifestation. And this is the overarching teaching of this one that we assign different words to different aspects of it. We don't break it into parts. Never forget, we're talking about the entirety of the wholeness of it all, recognizing that all of this is simultaneously present. I hope you had your coffee this morning. All right, Ryan, we're going to move to you, and we're going to see what's going on out there.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Petra, and welcome to everybody who is watching us here all across the globe online and on Zoom. And thank you for all the folks here in the room as well, too. This is an engaging conversation, and as you're sitting there marinating in your brain, some thoughts or things that come up for you, I want to encourage you to use that blood to raise your hand and say it out loud. We might have some inspiration that follows along with it. And for those who are here in the room, if you want to raise your hand physically, the lovely rock star Patrick is over here, and he's going to be helping hand out the microphone. And for those who are here online via Zoom, you can hit the raise your hand icon or put your questions inside of the Q&A, and I can bring that into the room as well. And for all those folks, good evening to you on the other side of the globe right now. Thanks for tuning in. And please put your questions and comments inside of the chat, and I'll bring that into the room as well. So I always like to mention that anything that's in the comments, I keep anonymous, so that way we can continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. So with that being said, I'm just going to poll here in the room. Does anybody have any thoughts, feedback?
Here, we've got one right here in the front.
Somebody over here. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yay. Good morning.
This is Ross. This whole thing sounds, you use words like desire.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be a human element in an automatic process or a mechanical process. Because desire, it says, these things just don't fit in my brain. If it's an automatic process, how can we call it desire?
What makes it start?
I have no idea.
Desire.
Just none.
Right. But that's the thing, right? Because there's an impulse. So desire is a way that we're trying to get a hold of this impulse for creation. And I think the word desire is used. Little context, Ernest Holmes was writing at the beginning of psychology, right? Freud and Jung were coming along. And they took a whole part out of the original Science of Mind. In 1926, he wrote the original Science of Mind, and he had a whole thing on psychoanalysis and psychology in there. Took it all out because it was confusing on the one hand, and on the other hand, it was such a nascent new thing, right? But the thing that the New Thought had lots and lots and lots of agreement with what was coming up in psychology, the revelation of the subconscious mind, all of this totally an integral part of the growth of New Thought. The big thing that was that Science of Mind that Ernest Holmes did not agree with was the definition of the id. Right? And that the id was the desire of the individual, and it was inevitably described as somehow problematic. And that it was all of our base desires. Right? Okay, so then remember that Ernest Holmes read Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Ralph Waldo Emerson, in his essay on, pretty sure it's his essay on circles. Could have been his essay on self-reliance. But I think it's his, anyway, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. In one of those essays, he describes that our life is the and our choices, right, are out of our constitution. And what he means is not our basest desires. And he says, not the eating, drinking man, not the biological desires, not the needs of our humanity, but out of our constitution, which is our deepest and truest self. And when we make those, when we move out of our constitution, nothing can stand in our way. So Ernest Holmes is trying to elevate these urges that we have and understand that when we have a desire for more expression, more education, more engagement, more love, that is actually the impulse of life itself, no different than the impulse of life that causes a seed to burst out of its shell or a flower to burst out of its bud, to this impulse of life. Otherwise, the seed would just lay in the ground. Yeah. Nothing would cause it to do something. But there is inherent an aliveness, which is not mechanical. It's an aliveness. It's that which animates, which we have over time become to realize that ultimately we can call that consciousness. And that is something, even if it's not physical. And that is what he's pointing to. And that we can trust our deepest and truest desires, impulses. And again, not our biological impulses, not what we might say our base needs, not our addictions, not our, right? He's trying to capture that idea of the id and say, no, that's not urge for stuff. That's an urge for life. And your most fundamental reality is the urge for life. And so he uses the word desire. We can quibble about the word. We can find a better one, right? It is a confusing thing because we don't want to anthropomorphize the one. We want the one to reveal itself to us so we know something more about ourselves. But we're sort of stuck with human language, which is why we're also constantly parsing. He used the word thought. We would use the word consciousness. He uses the word thought, but he even defines it for himself, movement and consciousness, right? So we're constantly updating the language as well. And so that's the project here. What is it that causes you to get out of bed in the morning, that causes you to want more? And not just because we've all been habituated to want more from our economic system. Not that kind of want more, right?
Got it.
If that's helpful. Sort of. Just hold it lightly. Just hold it lightly, right? And these are the things then to ponder. What is the deepest desire of my soul or of my spirit, right? I'm seeking to tap into how is this one infinite reality seeking to become self-realized as me?
There's really something about this that it's one of those things that once you hear it, it's obviously true. Although you might not have ever thought of it, it is obviously true.
Yes, it resonates, right? Which is why it's worth learning the theory. You can go out on YouTube and you can watch, videos on how to manifest, and somebody will tell you, do your affirmation, do this, do that, and la 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 la. But when it really starts to resonate, it's because we've educated ourselves. We've learned something about the philosophy, which is why everybody needs to be in classes. This is what we do in classes. Right? And we work with it and we talk about it and we deepen it and we deepen it and we deepen it and we deepen it. And after, 6 or 7 or 8 classes where you have to actually talk about it, you have to write a paper about it, you have to think it through, right? All of a sudden it's starting to marinate, right? And it's starting to make sense. And, you take 3 or 4 years of classes on a regular basis, I will tell you, you will understand something in a whole different way. And the other reason why we do this is because Willie's not here today. This is probably her 3rd, if not 4th time around in the Science of Mind class, going through the book. And every time we read it together, we hear something new, something deeper, like something that was like, I don't quite get it. You're here when we go around again in 4 years. We start over here. The next time it'll be like, oh yeah, and it starts to really begin to integrate in a way. But the first thing is that we listen for the resonance. Beautiful. Thanks, Ross. And we don't have to intellectually understand it. That's why we do thought experiments. That's why we have metaphors. That's why we play around with different ways of thinking about it, other ways that people have said it, till we find something that unlocks, opens, that's it, and then we get to play with it. Ryan.
Dr. Petra, I would really love to hear from some folks online here in the Zoom room. So if you have a question or would love to add to the conversation, I'd like to see your hand raised. Just giving it a second before we move to the next chapter.
Good.
Always good to pull those folks who are here on Zoom with us. But it looks like they're still marinating, so maybe we could go just a little.
Oh, we have one right here.
Oh, okay. We've got somebody here in the room.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mary Grace.
Hi, Mary Grace.
So just as we're kind of sitting here, my experience with it is kind of like when you had a dream and you kind of remember it, but you can't quite grasp it. You're like, oh, I totally remember that dream, but I don't. I think that's kind of the feelings I'm having with this. It's like, I know it, but I can't quite grasp it.
Right.
And then I'll have a moment where I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that part. And then it's gone again. So that's kind of been my experience with this. So I appreciate having these every week so that we can kind of grasp those little pieces.
Beautiful. And each moment like that, right, is building a little bit of a mental map, a little bit of an experience within us. And what those moments are when you're grasping it, that's your intuition. We improperly use intuition to mean the download that we get from spirit. Intuition is actually a very real way of knowing. And it is that moment where we get something and it's like, and then what happens usually is that we try to be able to talk about it, analyze it, and express it, and we immediately don't get it anymore. And so we have to trust those moments, right? Keep trusting those moments, and they begin to create a new mental territory. And slowly but surely, as we do the spiritual work together and we read and we study, that's why spiritual study is one of our sacred studies, is one of our spiritual practices, because we begin to see different ways that people are talking about the same thing. And slowly but surely, there's something that settles in. Some of it is forever difficult to experience, to talk about, right? Because we're talking about a wholeness and a oneness with dualistic language. And we inevitably are using only our own words, right? And our own language to describe it. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah. And so that's what I mean by hold it lightly. Right? Trust those flashes of, oh. It's good. And remember that the science of mind is not psychology. And we are overly psychologized today in our culture. And everything is, we have a tendency to hear the words psychologically or to hear them from a purely human point of view. But when we're talking about the philosophy, this is probably one of the hardest things for us to do in our culture today, because we are untrained in philosophical thinking, which is to think about things without the I present. Ryan, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to ask this question that came in through the chat, so I'll just
Great.
read it here. It asks, since spirit longs to know herself in its entirety, what are the ways in which there is a desire to grieve our losses? The urge for life benefits from the creation's gifts, which give the space for the gift of grief. Can you comment on the gifts that are only experienced in the dark?
Well, I wouldn't say grief is experienced only in the dark. I wouldn't equate grief and dark. So grief is a human experience. So it doesn't really fit in this conversation, because this conversation, we're talking about the nature of the infinite reality. So do we think stars grieve? I don't know. Do we think the air grieves when we breathe it? Right? So this is the very thing. It's so difficult. We have become so embedded in our own experience that we want to be able to see the experience of reality, of the nature of infinite reality, not the reality that we perceive, not just the physical reality, but this oneness. We're seeking to create a map of an infinite reality. And so this is why Ralph Waldo Emerson says, he writes, that it is only this finite that is wrought and suffered. The infinite lies stretched in smiling repose. Because for the infinite, the grief that we might feel in the moment is a nanosecond. And it is simply an experience. We call it grief and we say it's dark, and most of us think of it as bad and want to avoid it. But it's simply an experience. It's no more or less of an experience than joy, than love, than a sadness is an important expression. And it's part, just like the leaves falling from the tree is an important expression. All of it is in service to life for life. And so from a human point of view, we ignore all of that at our peril, because we're basically shutting out a whole boatload of experiences, which is no different than shutting ourselves in the house because we're afraid of what's going on out in the world. That's exactly the same thing. So I'm not going to experience anything outside of my house because I'm afraid. So I'm not going to experience grief or loss because I'm afraid, because I don't like it, because it's right? But that's just our human interpretation. For the infinite, it is simply an experience. And the experiences come and go. The spirit is changeless. Creation comes and goes, right? These two things are simultaneously true, being and becoming. It's a great question. I'm trying to pop you into a different view, a different plane of consciousness. Those questions are great from a psychological point of view, and they are excellent when we get to what does this mean about us. But I want us to try to leave the us out of the equation as we're thinking about this infinite reality. Of course, it's virtually impossible, but we do our best. All right, I have a comment back here. Please say your name.
I'm Laura. I was just going to say grief is a part of the world of relativity, which is where we live.
Right.
It's part of the contrast. It's part, as compared to the absolute, which is, I think, where we come from, who we are innately. So it's just a part of the playground that we live in.
Right. Yes, beautiful. Which is why spiritual detachment allows us to experience grief without becoming despairing, without feeling like we've fallen into the dark. It's because we can hold it as this too shall pass, right? The physical reality, creation is always changing. So any joy, don't hold on to it. Don't, because you know it's going to go. Because this experience is changing. Creation is forever changing. It's that spiritual reality of the essential nature of who we are that is never changing. Ryan, and then we've got a comment back here.
Yeah, I see that Bobby has her hand raised. Bobby, would you like to go ahead and join us and unmute yourself?
Hi, Bobby.
Good morning, Dr. Petra and CSLDallas Tribe. Yeah, I just wanted to share that my TSRW, inward journey, we've been looking at Michael Singer and the untethered soul, yes. And, letting things pass through us so that they're not blocking our energy flow. And it dawned on me yesterday when I had a little household emergency and the toilet overflowed, and I'm like, well, I had some expletives and some other things, and then as I'm going around looking at what was ahead of me for cleanup, I'm like, this is just an experience.
That's right.
And diffused all of the emotion. Grief is an emotion. Diffused all of the emotion attached to it, and it's like, well, then I can come back to a place of center, and it's like, oh, well, what's going to be the best way to approach this?
Yes, beautiful.
And just let go of all of the emotion and the attached to the experience.
Yeah, to let it be what it is. Beautiful. And we do practice that. Let it be what it is, while we can still say, and what do I do now? What would I like to have next? And the other side of that coin is these bad emotions. What are they? Grief, anger, and depression. Those are the three that we think are bad emotions, negative emotions. God forbid we should feel it, because we're a positive attitude spirituality, right? Except that grief, we don't grieve things we don't love. Grief is simply the other side of love, right? And depression is simply the other side of bliss. And because we are living in a relative expression in which the fabric of this expression is the pairs of opposites, right? So either joy is completely present or it's completely absent. We call that despair, but there isn't actually a actual feeling, impulse for despair. It's the complete absence of joy, right? And so an anger is the expression of the opposite of our sense of connection and oneness. Our boundaries have been violated, an injustice has happened, something has gone amiss, right? And so when it's clean anger, clean grief, clean despair are very natural parts of our experience. It's only when we don't have our grief, and then we don't have grief again, and then we don't experience, and then pretty soon we have this pile of that, right? And then something happens and our grief explodes out, and our response is 10 times of the experience, only because we haven't been allowing ourselves to just be with what is. I lost something I love. Loved one, home, job, belief in the future, whatever it is. right? And so yeah, and so we are, and this, we're going to talk about this. We're constantly living, we ourselves are constantly living in both states at the same time. Just like there is a quantum field governed, they're trying to figure out all the kind of laws and things that govern the quantum field, and there's the Newtonian field that is governed by Newtonian physics. They appear in the face of it to be diametrically opposed, or at least incredibly unrelated, because you can't make the laws of the quantum field work in the macrocosm, in the Newtonian physics, or vice versa. And yet, both of them are simultaneously true, depending on which aspect of physicality you are focusing on. This is a brilliant metaphor for the reality of the spiritual, unchanging life that we cannot see, and all of creation that we can see. Psychology is part of the laws of what we do in creation, all the sustainability, lots and lots, blah, 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 right? All the spiritual work we do over here. They are mutually supportive, but not identical. And if we try to put them over top of each other, we have the same problem they're having in science, right? Trying to make the laws make sense in the different realms of reality. So we're talking about levels of consciousness, realms of consciousness, levels of reality. And you know what? We're capable of doing that. We're all completely capable of doing it. Why do I know that? Because we're all currently experiencing it. All right, beautiful. So just hold it all lightly. And truthfully, you don't have to agree with anything I say or anything the Science of Mind says. You have to prove it to yourself. You have to cogitate on it, find the way in which you're going to hold it. You might just pretend that it's possible, that it's true, and see if it makes any difference. And we'll go on to the next section in the book. And, just keep doing thought experiments. Like, what if? How can spirit be changeless and creation changing, and it's all part of the one? Ooh, there you go. Just meditate on that for a year.
A year, yeah.
Good, all right. Thanks so much. So I just want to remind you, for those of you who are not with us physically present, we are finishing up our pledge program. We have our Celebration Sunday next week, and we do not want you to miss out on supporting this fabulous work. We love having you be a part of it, and one of the ways that you're a part of it is to give your pledge, because that's part of what helps us be available every Sunday morning. And we love being available with you online, and we love having you here in the room. So please do participate and become a deeper part of our community. All right, I guess we're done. Bye for now.